With Barca Munich vs PSG finally ending, we're coming to the conclusion of the NEL. All that's left is seeing the result of the Manshine vs Barca match and getting the final rankings to determine who will come on top and who will make Japan's U20 roster for the upcoming U20 World Cup arc. I do want to mention that as of this video, the latest chapter is 294, where it ends with the final salaries about to get updated. But before then, we jump back 33 minutes as we see Nagi and Rio in the middle of the Manshine vs FC Barca match. Now I don't want to talk too much about my salary predictions as of now, as I want to save it for another video, but a little preview is that Nanase will increase in rank and still get eliminated as he failed to get assists, Hero will make it because of his borderline gimmick, and finally Tokumitsu, despite all odds, will actually survive. And so for this video I primarily want to talk about the battle of the losers. With the next chapter having the title Number 1, there's potential that we only see the conclusion of the match with chapter 295, ending with the final salaries as Isuki is declared first place as he exceeds Rin's value. However, I'm still skeptical about this happening, as I think there's a decent chance we get a few chapters on Nagi and Rio's development, and instead the final rankings will be given in chapter 299, which is Isuki's original number and also releases on his birthday, so it's a perfect chapter number for Isuki being declared ranked number 1. And so for the title, the number 1 is not referencing Isuki being declared rank 1, but instead focuses on Nagi, who came into the match talking about reaching number 1 in the world. So I'm predicting that we'll have approximately 5 chapters dedicated to the Manshine vs FC Barca match, which focuses on Nagi's awakening, and so we see his anticipated development on screen instead of waiting for it in the spin-off. As stories go in the NEL, Nagi probably has the second most important plot after Isuki as we see his downfall. And so it's very important that we actually see it in the main story, or at least now, about how Nagi actually develops. Simply because Nagi is an important character and we're coming to the U20 World Cup arc, so it's important to know his journey as it indicates what his future growth will be. Like, will he completely flop with Barca winning 3-0 and he basically gets no development until the U20 World arc? Or will it be like he scores the final goal so it indicates that he's beginning to develop? Or does he awaken and fully understand his own ego and reach the same level as another character like Baro, Shido or even Rin? And knowing that, I think there's a very good chance that we see Nagi's journey and all the key points in the match. And so the first thing I want to talk about is why Nagi even went in a down spiral in the first place. And it's mainly because of Isuki's rapid evolution in the Manshine game. With Nagi basically being new to the game, he's seen as a baby chick from Chris, and so he's tasked with constantly thinking and being the nucleus of the team to help his development. And so in this environment, he's slowly evolving, which is not a problem because in the long term it helps. But the issue is his rival Isuki adapts and evolves in his own way at a significantly faster pace as he got Metavision, and so Nagi begins to feel this gap and requests help from Rio to salvage this gap between the two. So he disregards Chris and Aki's advice and has Rio do all the thinking part of their plays while focusing on himself. As he finds the optimal challenge in Isuki, he reaches his ultimate peak and he scores his fluke super goal, something that surpassed his skill level and by doing so dispersed his passionate ego. Since Nagi has his own spin-off, we don't necessarily have to see their complete journey, and the side story could explore their development more, but we should at least get something for the main story to indicate that they've changed, as it's an important arc for both characters. Like even in the third selection, Rio had 2 chapters dedicated to his change, so we should at least get more than 1 or even half a chapter, because this arc for these 2 characters is so important for the story. With Rio stating if they continue to play poorly, they could still get eliminated, we have stakes for why they need to reawaken now. Their slump can't continue into the U20 World Cup simply because losing again could be the end for them, and even if they survive while slumping, then Ego won't even sub them in and remain as bench warmers. This match is incredibly important for them to evolve and win, which is why they'll defeat Barca as they need this victory more than Bachira does, who has already made a name for himself. Coming into the match, we see that Nagi acknowledges his struggle, and they do indeed have to change, and we see him say it. If we don't keep changing, we will never reach the world's #1 spot. So there's a good chance that 33 minutes ago is the moment when Nagi starts to feel the heat he desires again, which is a huge part of his character because this heat directly relates to his ego and reference whenever he deals with difficult challenges. Like we're told specifically that it's 33 minutes ago, indicating that we're gonna be in the middle of their match. It's not going to be the conclusion of the match simply because they would have just shown the end result otherwise. This heat and his true ego is still debatable in what it is, but to me I've always been a firm believer that this heat is when he feels most alive, which contrasts his death motive. He comes from a tepid life where everything is a bore to him and practically lifeless, as he does the bare minimum to survive. But when we see him meet Rio and enter Blue Lock, we get a glimpse of the game over screen, indicating he effectively died. His old self is gone at these moments because he is soon to experience this burning passion he has for life, and that is through soccer. So in the NEL, the issue is that he hit this challenge through restricting himself to Iski as he decides to defeat him. But once he did, he no longer can reach this challenge because to him defeating Iski was the most important thing and doesn't know how to challenge and experience this heat anymore. So when Ego walks in right after Nagi's conversation, we get the concept of originality and hunger, which still applies in the FC Barca vs Manshine match. In order for Nagi to evolve and feel this heat, he has to understand what does he truly want in his core hunger in this match. But besides discovering their true ego, the other big issue at the moment is their codependency. We saw Agi directly call Rio out for ruining his development during the game, and even after failing, reiterates that they are dooming each other, even warning them they have a singular chance to change. So coming into the match, we have a few things Nagi and Rio have to do in order to evolve and win. Nagi needs to find a way to be more creative and free, like Chris instructed. They both need a way to not be codependent, and finally both have to understand their true egos and hunger. So knowing everything of what caused this downfall and what they need to do to escape, I can finally talk about the actual match and what I think will happen, and so I want to talk about who will play in the match first. From Manshine's side, since Chris hasn't abandoned them yet, the core 3 will still play in the match and the ace Agi too. We also have the secondary squad who played in the 2 games, including Neo who tried locking Nagi down in the U20 game and who I'm expecting to be their core defensive player. Wanama who will likely play as he relates to Chigiri as his reunion was hindered to, and also part of Nagi's 3rd selection team, who I also think may have a bigger role that I'll explain later, and finally Hiroki who also relates to half of Manshine and had direct relations with Nagi in the 2nd selection, and told he would appear in the main story by the spin-off's author. As for the other 3 players, Nishioka is a 50-50, and I say that because he is a meme character and intentionally avoided by the author. Like if you look at all the Manshine panels, he's the person most sidelined. However, he did get a salary and should show up, but knowing the author, I wouldn't be shocked if he had Nishioka play and subbed him off right before the flashback starts. That being said, he is the character in the match I want to see the most. Sunzaki also played with Nagi in the 3rd selection, and so I think he has a decent chance of playing, despite not playing yet. It's hard to predict anything about him, but since he directly relates to Nagi, his chances of playing are non-zero. Finally, Saramadara. Unfortunately, he is fairly fodder and not that good in the 3rd selection, but also doesn't really relate to either Nagi nor Rio's development, and so he is the player with the highest risk of not playing. As for the other team, we have Spain, and their 2 main carries, Bachira and Natoya. The next important character I'd say is Himazu, where this will be his 3rd match with Nagi in it, and so they do seem to have a bit of a history together to continue to actually play in the match. Sakura is the only Barca player who didn't play so far, however he is also someone who played against Rio in the 3rd selection, and so if the spin-off shows Rio's journey, then having Sakura play is also a possibility. And if you remember my theory from before, I predicted that Haiji to be on that team too, alongside Nishioka, and if I'm right then this trio are all involved in the battle of losers too. But either way, I think Haiji will play again too, and Sakura has a decent chance depending on Rio's journey in the spin-off manga. As for the OG U20 squad and the team, Darai and Hayate could play, but since their salary didn't go up, there was a chance they didn't even step foot on the pitch. Meanwhile, the other two weren't that good, but still got low offers, but that could be through experimentation from Lavino. And so overall I think they all have a decent chance of playing, but I wouldn't be shocked if a few like Wakasuki didn't. By the look of the players involved, a lot of them directly relate to Nagi and Ryo's development previously in the story, and I think there's a good chance that both Barcha and Manshine use majority Blue Lock squads and their team formations will look something like these. As for the match, the easiest prediction for me is the final goal, and that is with Nagi scoring off Ryo's assist, but unlike the previous times, it's a goal similar to Hero in Charles, one where it's not due to codependency and Ryo doing the thinking, but instead a play where both go to the optimal spot to score. It will likely also be a super goal, but actually attainable within his skill parameters. For the rest of the match, I think it's likely that Barcha have the advantage in the first 2 or so chapters, where each chapter is a goal. So the first chapter will have Nagi and Ryo continue to struggle and hit rock bottom as they despair. With Barcha being a team with a freedom and creative philosophy, they are the perfect team to trigger Nagi's awakening. And when you have Bachira on the team, then he is the exact key for Nagi to change, because if you remember from the second selection, they now have a reverse scenario. So after this, we have the beginning of the Manshine's reverse sweep, where Nagi decides to abandon Ryo and their codependency. Instead, I think Nagi will form a chemical reaction with Chigiri and additionally Wanama too. The reason why I think Wanama specifically is because he himself had a codependent relationship with his twin, where they played as they relied on their combination play. But the thing is, we didn't see how his journey of being self-sufficient when he teamed up with Raichi and Gakamaru. But if Wanama evolved to a level where he is a good passer to anyone, not just his brother, then he can also be an option for Nagi, in a way to help him develop. I also just want to see Chigiri and Wanama team up again, and judging by the twin from the author's other series as the God's Will, there's a good chance he gets redeemed or helps him before getting eliminated. I do want to mention that I don't think Chigiri will score this match, and so him assisting Nagi is how I believe they will get the first goal. This is simply because I interpret Chigiri and Kunigami as equals, so if they both score 2 goals coming to the final game and Kunigami only gets an assist, then I'm also predicting that Chigiri only gets 1-2 to restore balance. Also, quick side note, but I'd also love if during the time Kunigami was subbed out, he briefly opens up the FC Barcha vs Manshine game, seeing Chigiri popping off, which could relate to their last interaction together. I'm doubting this will happen, but it's something I'd like to see. But breaking free from codependency is not the only thing Nagi requires this match. Even if he secures himself a top 23 spot, Nagi strives for number 1, which is why the next step in the match is to correctly identify what exactly is his hunger and originality. Nagi has the same ego type as Rin and Baru, and just like how they despaired and had to look back in order to awaken, Nagi needs to reevaluate why exactly he's struggling and how to reach his peak performance. He needs to find a new way to restrict himself in order to reach his top performance. I also do want to mention that this kind of restriction is different to the one Ryo is putting on Nagi, and I want to bring up Baru's awakening because similar to how he broke from Snuffy's restrictive environment, Nagi needs to do something similar too. So for the second goal, I can see one of 2 options. The first one is Nagi beginning to understand his ego and learn his limit, where he will be in another prime position for a super goal but turns it down, and instead creates a new creative play that's more safe and pulls it off alongside Aki. Scoring the second goal, he's on track for competing with the number 1 spot again, but doing so Ryo will be ditched with his odds of surviving diminishing. On the other hand, we may see Ryo also embrace the fact he doesn't need to be codependent either, and instead passes to a new option like Nishioka or Agi, and in this specific case, both Nagi and Ryo have successfully shown they don't need each other, with the final goal showing that they still can work together but in a new healthy relationship. Besides that, I do believe all the other members like Wanama, Hirogi, Neo, Himizu, etc. all have plays in this match, but overall, Manshine will win 3-2, and with that being said, thanks for watching, Buddha be praised, and have a good day.